here with my lovely co-host,
Lauren Green, your wife. Hi.
Hi, how you going? On today's podcast, we got to speak to our good friend, Dr. Layne Norton. He was out here with his partner, Holly Baxter, running some seminars in Australia, and we got to host them at Warrior Performance. If you missed out, shame on you.
Naughty, naughty.
But hopefully he's coming back again next year, so you can book your tickets. I've seen Layne present about 4 or 5 times now, and every time it's different. So if you have seen him present before and you think that you're not going to get something out of it, you're very mistaken, my friend.
You'll always learn something from Layne.
Yeah, definitely.
Had a good chat with Layne about the differences between Australian and American coffee. There are many differences, if you didn't know. Now you know. We had a good chat as well about his return from his back injury. So he did some work with Stuart Mcgill and Brian Carroll, which was really good to talk to him about that. We also had a chat with Holly about her first experience on the powerlifting platform, which was only really recent, and she did really well at the comp. So that was great to have a chat with her about that and hear about her first experience.
Yeah, and she did very good for her first day out. We also spoke to Layne, got him to elaborate on the importance of protein intake, since Layne might know a thing or two about protein metabolism.
Just a little bit. Mr. PhD in protein.
Yeah, so it's a great podcast, guys. If you like the podcast, please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, or if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe and like the video.
Give us a like.
Yeah.
Give us a like, mate.
Cheers, guys.
Enjoy.
Enjoy. That's why you're good for a podcast.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Lauren's like, this won't go very long. I'm like, hi, have we met?
Yeah.
Well, you're lucky. This is our actually very first one.
Really?
Yeah, we haven't recorded anyone yet, so...
Also, make sure to send it off with a bang.
You're popping our cherry.
Yeah.
Nice.
Podcast cherry.
Nice.
Well, we'll be sure
I would
to
say
talk
I've done that a
once
lot in my life, but that's not true.
Good to see you dressed up for the occasion. We do.
I did.
All right. So, we have Mr. Layne Norton and Holly
Dr. Layne Norton.
Dr. Layne Norton and Holly Baxter.
Hi.
How are you guys?
This is my friend now.
We're very well, thank you.
I always enjoy getting my ego floated. Thank you, Lauren.
You're welcome. I'm done now. I can just rip you.
Now you can be full savage on me.
All right, so how you guys been?
Good, yeah. Just long flight and got some sleep last night, so I feel pretty normal now. How about you?
Yeah, well, we were just chatting before starting. I woke up at about 4 a.m. and was ready to get up and start answering emails, and I convinced myself it probably wasn't the best decision considering I've got a whole day and seminars. So, other than that, very good.
About 5 p.m. yesterday, she was like, oh, babe, I think I'm going to have a sleep. And I'm like, you're going to get up at like 3 a.m.
Yeah, you got to push through.
We got seminars from 6 to 9. You're going to be falling asleep during your seminar. I feel like maybe not going to bed at 5 p.m. would be the best move. So
Would have been lovely.
It's tough, though, because it's like, it's just a long flight. For anybody that's never done that, it is
a long flight.
You can't imagine. It's like purgatory, because 15 hours, you just start to lose track of time and space and all sense of yourself, and you just feel like you're never going to get off the damn plane.
Well, you did the right thing coming in and training yesterday.
Yeah.
Get off the plane, train, try to get into a routine.
Definitely.
Assess Australian coffee.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, Layne, do you want to tell us about your experience with Australian coffee?
Oh, y'all got,
Can you explain what a piccolo
I can
is?
curse on this podcast.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, good. It's encouraged even.
Yes.
Y'all got like
Shannon.
50,000 fucking types of coffee. Like, you could do a PhD thesis on coffee over here. Like in America, you go, okay, I'd like a coffee. Okay, done. Here's it poured into a cup. There you go. And over here, it's like, if you ask for a coffee, they just look at you. Like,
Stand blankly. No, well, I had the same experience when I went to
Which
US.
one?
It's like, I went up to, and you were like, are you going to have a coffee? And I was like, well, can I have this kind? And you're like, I don't know what that is.
the fuck is that?
How do I order a cappuccino? A what?
Yeah, and then so she explains to me like what each one is and all that kind of stuff. But I will say this for to be fair to Australians, you do have damn good coffee.
Our coffee is good. American coffee is pretty shit.
So
unless you know where to go, and usually that's Australian baristas.
I actually can say we have not been to anywhere where there's been coffee since I've lived here in the last 12 months.
How did you stay?
So, I actually, you know what?
I bought a machine.
I enjoy Nescafe out of the jar, the instant variety. That's about the closest thing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. She doesn't like many things over there, so I've been I think I'm on notice. I better keep my shit together. Otherwise she'll be flying on the next flight back. So
You're treading a thin line.
Yeah, I think honestly, like, the best coffee over there is probably just Dunkin' Donuts. About as good as you get. Like, I don't like Starbucks. I think Starbucks
I don't
is
love
pretty
Starbucks, but I know there's a few
garbage.
times I've been in America when I've gone, I'll just have Starbucks because it's a safe bet.
Yeah, you're not going to get screwed. We were at the Tampa airport. Oh, my God. There was this place
If
by
only
the
you could see my face right now.
United Terminal. Well, they can. It's right there. She's just shrinking below the table. And it, like, I got about halfway through the cup of coffee, and I was like,
I actually can't finish this.
I actually would not drink this if somebody like paid me $5 to drink it. Like, it was that bad.
Yeah,
just
like
completely burnt. Yeah. So, but actually, and my favorite coffee I've ever had was in Europe, Costa.
Really?
Yeah, I really liked that. It was good.
You must have got lucky.
Did you see the Australians at the table looking at you kind of confused?
Turns out that's like, I don't know, telling a car guy you like a car that's shit. I can't think of a comparable.
Have you seen that new Holden Commodore? Jeez, that's a really nice car.
How about that new Corolla?
Oh, yeah.
Love me a Corolla.
Same.
Well, you guys haven't seen my car, so actually I probably would be impressed by a Corolla.
The Alero. We actually made a joke. So we just bought a house very recently in the US, and it's in a gated community, and we need to get
A
little
new car
stickers.
to fit in?
Well, yeah, I actually had to buy a car since I moved over, but Layne has this, I don't know, it's like a 1999 Oldsmobile.
It's a 2003. They don't even make Oldsmobile anymore. It's 2003 Oldsmobile Alero.
It's basically an antique. Anyhow, like, it lets all the other cars through, no worries, and you drive up to it, it just opens because of the little buzzers, and Layne puts the sticker on the Corolla. I mean, sorry, what are we talking about? The
Alero.
Oldsmobile. And he just doesn't get let in, and I'm driving off, zooming away, and I text him, I'm like, what's it saying about your car there,
It's actually difficult because the driver's side window no longer rolls down. Well, sorry, it rolls down, but then sometimes it doesn't roll up, and you have to like pull it out manually. So I can't like roll down the window to tell the guard box to let me in.
Yeah, God help it rains and you've had your window down.
Yeah, so. Oh, God, yeah, one time she drove the car. She says when she drives it like this.
Yeah, I'm going to just hold it
Doesn't
by
really
the
touch
tips of my
anything.
fingers.
And she left the driver's side window down. I'm like, babe, why'd you leave it down? She's like, well, it wouldn't roll up. I'm like, well, why did you come get me? She's like, you should not need 18 steps to roll a window up. But, hey,
You're in a gated community.
But
Your car will be safe.
I'm going to take a picture of me in front of the car, like...
He actually joked about this when we bought the house. He was like, oh my gosh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go and pimp up the Alero, and I'm going to put some wheels on it and take a photo out the front with the house in the background. I'm like, you probably would too.
Put some spinners on it.
Yeah, some dinner plates.
I only keep that car just to spite everybody that makes fun of me.
You know what? It has saved us in times of car breakdowns and before I got my car, so I'm not going to complain.
Your little accident you had there?
Oh, my little accident, yeah.
We're going to talk about that, are we?
The first week she had a brand new Jeep. Oh, wasn't her fault though.
No, it was not my fault. I still got the ticket for it, and had to attend a 4-hour driving school, which was the worst 4 hours, and I think it actually rolled on to about 8 hours. It was an online course, and Layne thought it'd be good to do a comedy.
It had good reviews.
He and I have just sat gruelingly through this driving course and just could not believe the quality.
Yeah,
was so
it
good.
was.
Anyway.
America.
I have PTSD from that course.
Yeah. I believe you have to do one now, actually. Didn't you lose some points the other day?
Fuck yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Don't do that one.
So, Layne, you've recently come back from injury.
Yeah.
You hurt yourself. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, I originally started having some low back problems in 2015. I was a week out from the Arnold Classic in March, and I didn't really notice anything when I was training. I was doing my last heavy session before the Arnold. And after squats, I was doing bench press, and I felt my lower back was pretty tight, but it wasn't really painful, just real tight. And then, of course, like an idiot, decided to go and do my deadlifts anyway because, fuck listening to your body, might as well just power through. And I think it was like 610 for sets of 4, which I did fine, and but got up the next morning and couldn't even hardly move. So I rested up. I ended up being able to compete a week later, which I couldn't believe, and won that meet, and which was probably kind of bad for me because I started, you start thinking you're Superman, cause like, oh my God, I couldn't even walk a week ago, and here I am squatting 300 kilos, awesome. And I kind of battled that on and off in my prep for Worlds that year. I did have to take like 3 weeks off from squatting and just kind of did leg press. And I remember squats didn't even start feeling good till like a week out of Worlds, which was scary. But got through that, and then it didn't really bother me too much. In fact, you remember when I came in 2016, I was dealing with a hip injury. Like that was actually what was really bothering me. So I started rehabbing the hip injury. Was coming back from that, feeling really, really good. And in late September, early October of 2016. Again, I had a deadlift session, felt fine. 2 days later, couldn't stand up. And rehabbed again, bought The Back Mechanic by Stu Mcgill, used that book, rehabbed again, came back, did a pretty good run last year of meets, won a couple, got 7th at Nationals, but that was more of, one, the competition standard has gone up, but also I strained my pec about 3 weeks out. I was looking back at my training and how stressed I was and everything the shit that was going on in my life. I'm very happy with how that meet went. Very happy with that. But what was great was I ended up setting a deadlift PR, which was completely unexpected. Yeah. I did not expect to be able to do that. But then a few months later, kind of retweaked that what it ends up is a disc bulge between L4 and L5. Yep. And that time, man, I've never had something. I mean, it just locked me up. Like even without the pain, I couldn't move. I was so tight. In fact, I woke up the night to go to the bathroom, and she had to come get me because I couldn't get all the way around the bed. Yeah. And that's just a really scary, shitty feeling.
I had to do that before, crawl to the bathroom.
Yeah, I couldn't even hardly crawl.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of days where you were like told not to do anything and you had to get around somehow, so we were just pulling you along the floor, and then you had your A7 t-shirt.
Yeah, I had my A7 grip shirt on, which was a bad idea.
So
she's like trying to drag me across, literally trying to drag me across the floor.
I think we sent a video to them. We're like, "Yep, your shirts work."
So and just like so I ended up getting a cortisone shot. Realized that's not a long-term fix, but I needed to be able to just move so I could start getting better. Got that. That helped a ton. Probably took away 70 or 80% of the pain. And then started. I reached out to Brian Carroll and Stu Mcgill. Went up, met with them in Jacksonville, and actually really got good news from Stu Mcgill, who examined me, put me through a battery of tests, and said, basically your back is pretty healthy. You just got that disc bulge, and when it flares up, it's going to lock you up. So he's like, we have to. In his words, were, back. His kind of theory is backs do two things well. They can be really flexible and nimble, or they can be stiff and rigid. Yep. And for lifting, you want stiff and rigid. You don't. He's like, all these people doing this flexibility work on their spine. He's like, you want to be flexible enough to get to your competition standard of depth, and no more flexible than that. In fact, when I was squatting, he said, "You've got a wonderfully tight pair of hamstrings." Never heard anybody express it that way.
Tight hamstrings.
Yeah. But he's like, that's where you get your power from. And he said, people who talk about getting loose for a session. Why would you want to be loose?
Yeah, well, I've noticed that with a lot of sprinters, and they tend to have very tight hamstrings, but they're so explosive. It was something I noticed years ago. So,
well, and you think about muscles are not the same way, but they're a little bit like rubber bands,
Yeah.
you know? So if you get a real loose rubber band, you don't have a lot of power there.
Yeah.
But if you got a really tight rubber band, the problem is balancing that tightness with not tearing something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or not causing it. Because you know what? Powerlifting is like the king sport for soft tissue injuries.
Yeah.
I mean, it just beats the crap out of you. You know, Holly got the full powerlifting experience for her first meet, like dealing with soft tissue injuries.
Yeah.
And realized that the real work that goes into powerlifting is not the training of the maiden lifts. I love that. That's
Not
fun.
falling apart.
Yeah, that shit's fun, you know? And even now, looking, like, I have to train different than I used to. I used to just blunt force trauma volume, you know? Just more volume, you know? And looking back at the shit I used to do, I'm like, how the fuck did I do that and stay together? You know, I actually think I was...
We have youth on your side.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing. And I see a lot of these guys, and I had somebody talking shit on my Instagram the other day, but, you know, saying, oh, well, you hurt yourself, you must have done something wrong, your form is shit, this and that. And I said, well, if your measure of good form and somebody who knows what they're doing with squats is somebody who doesn't get injured, then you're going to be pretty disappointed and have a pretty barren list of people. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, like even I talked to Ed Cohn. Ed Cohn had quite a few injuries, you know, and it's hard. And whenever you're talking about like competing at a really high level in a sport, you are always going to toe that line of injury versus being able to make progress.
Yeah.
Because once you've gotten to a certain level, the kind of training and the stress you need to put on your body to further adapt and get better is going to be right next to what's going to cause you to get injured.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So trying to, and that's just something that I think a lot of people don't think about, but I've just learned that you kind of accept that. And I think what I'm trying to get better at doing now, one, doing more rehab stuff and making sure I put my spine in the best. But I mean, I could still injure myself again. It's not like this stuff's going to help, but I probably will at some point. You know. But I think one of the things doing better is knowing when I can tell my back's a little angry. You know, even if the disc isn't
Listening
fully
to the small
flared,
signs.
and listening to that and saying, you know, maybe today's not the best day to squat, and letting discretion be the better part of valor.
Yeah, I think that's one thing people get. They always want to do what's on the program, but sometimes that's not the best idea for your body. You've got to factor in the stress, the sleep, everything else that's going on in your life. Sometimes it's better to walk in the gym, do a deload session and walk out and come back another day. And
Yeah, I mean, really, what's that one session compared to the lifetime of your training? You know, it's
100%.
that one session isn't going to... I mean, you need to have that mentality in terms of being willing to do what it takes.
Yeah.
And also understanding the difference between being dinged up and being injured.
Yeah.
Right? That's a very fine line.
Yeah.
I think you said to me, Layne, you know, there was a couple of training sessions where I was really having a hard time and I wanted to keep, you know, just going at it. It was with a deadlift session, and I think you said to me...
In Thailand, I remember this.
You were like, you're not going to win the meet today. Like, this training session is important, but you're not going to win today. So just take it easy, do what you can for today, and then walk away and be happy that you got something in.
Which you didn't listen to.
But that's definitely one of the best things that you've taught me, is that like, sometimes your body's just not there for what's on the program. And lighten the weight and do the reps well, or if you're really beat up, walk away that day, it's fine, and then you can still... I mean, I've still hit numbers in meets when I've had bad preps and things like that.
I think, you know, just being able to be consistent, you know, because if you, like, what if that one session is going to cost you 3 months of your training?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You're not going to make gains if you're not in the gym.
Yeah.
You know, so something, I tell people this, it's not like a zero-sum game. You know, something is better than nothing. So if that just means, okay, well, I'm not doing squats today, but I'm going to do some belt squats or something like that, you're still making incremental progress.
Exactly.
You know, you're still accumulating some kind of stress on the tissue, but not enough that's going to cause you to probably get injured.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I've got a really good coach now who helps me with that. You know, Andres is very, my coach is Andres Vargas, which is, his company is the Strength Cave. And he coaches Holly as well. And he's very good at kind of, one, calming us down, you know, like when I'm like, fuck, this is, you know, no, this is fine. You know, I remember a week out from Nationals, I missed a 585-pound pull, which is 265 kilos. Yeah. And, you know, my personal best at that point was 322 and a half. Yeah. And I'm thinking, what the fuck? Like, I'm like, dude, this is stupid.
Yeah.
Like, this is so dumb. And he's like, you didn't just lose all that strength in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, he's like, your fatigue is masking your fitness right now. If we dissipate that fatigue, you're going to be able to show your fitness.
Yeah.
He's like, so that deadlift is going to be there on competition day. And what do you know? Pulled the PR 325 kilos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
The power of deload.
yeah, you don't want to underestimate it. But I think, you know, people ask me, would I go back and do stuff differently? I don't know if I would, because I still set that squat record. And, you know, I think that having that kind of mentality is probably a little bit of what it takes to get to that point.
Yeah.
You know, and honestly, I'm not going to learn my lesson unless something happens to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I like to think we learn from other people.
Yeah.
And please, to those of you watching and listening, please learn from my mistakes if you can. But you're probably not gonna. You're probably going to do the same shit
Do
I
as I
did.
say, not
And,
as I do.
and you're probably...
Don't be a dick, but watch me be a dick.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's tough, you know? We tend to go, especially in strength, you know, we tend to go, well, that's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
I won't happen to me.
Yeah.
He did that thing, and that's why that happened. And I think that's so much why, I see this a lot. Whenever somebody gets injured, like a big name in powerlifting or something, everybody starts trying to figure out why they got injured.
Yeah.
Everybody all of a sudden apparently gets their fucking medical degrees. You know what I mean? They're all orthopedic surgeons. And oh, well, it was because your hamstrings were oh, it was because your hips are out of line. Oh, it was this thing. And it's like, you don't get to watch me every day. You don't know what's going on,
Yeah.
you know? And sometimes shit just
How do you know
fucking
they
breaks.
didn't slip over in the shower and you know what I mean? And like pull a hamstring in the shower, and then the next day did a deadlift session and tweak something even more, than go into the meet and not a good position?
Well,
because I mean, there's always 1,000,001 factors that plays into that.
Well, and that's the other thing too. Mcgill talked about. He's like, you know, there's micro trauma to tissues, you know, that accumulates over time that you might not even know about.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something to keep in mind. So one of the things he you know, made me very aware of is just how I do everything every day.
Yeah.
Right. Bending over to tie my shoes. It's like you're not hunching over anymore.
Yeah.
He's like, you take your foot, you put it on a chair,
Yeah.
tie your shoe. You know, you bend down and pick up your kids, do a split squat.
Yeah.
You know, don't round your back to go pick up your kids.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard people have different, you know, theories about this and say, well, you know, some lumbar flexion is normal, and you probably should do some lumbar flexion so that your body, if and when you get in that position, you're not weak in that position.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this is one of those things that's it's tough to figure out, you know, because everybody has theories that sound good.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I think he makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but I think where Mcgill the point he comes from too, is seeing people whose backs are already basically destroyed, and we're going into flexion maybe when your back's healthy is probably all right. But is that theory where he said you only get so many flexions out of your spine?
Yeah.
And then he probably he wants to avoid that, so to avoid the pain triggers and let stuff heal. Which
and for most powerlifters, they become flexion intolerant.
Yeah.
You know, but it's funny because you will see some guys who have pulled
Yeah.
with full spinal flexion their entire careers and don't really get that injured. You know, now is it kind of a self-selecting thing where they're just very injury resistant, and so they get really freaking strong pulling that way, or do they get strong because they pull that way? It's hard to tell, you know. But you know, and that's why I tell people, I'm like, you know, just because somebody doesn't get injured, or you know, that doesn't mean you should coach it to do it the way they do it.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember I don't want to say names because I don't want to sound like I'm bashing anybody, but there's a really well-known powerlifter, one of the best in the world, one of the most popular in the world. And I used to watch the way he deadlifts, and I'd go, oh, God. No tightness, nothing, just fucking grip and rip, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I thought, man, I saw a lot of people try to emulate how he did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now actually he's having problems, you know. And obviously, again, you lift hard enough, long enough, that happens. So it's not necessarily the way he was doing it. But, yeah, it's just pain and this stuff it's fascinating, you know.
That's why you got injured, isn't it? Because of the way you squat.
Yeah, of course. Actually, I wish I'd gotten Mcgill on camera, you know, talking about this, because Mcgill said, you know, because for those of you who aren't familiar, I squat with a lot of forward lean.
Yeah.
And as soon as I walked up to him, he goes, "Oh boy, you are not built to be a squatter, but you worked it out, didn't you?"
Got some long femurs.
Very long femurs. So I mean, but it's you know, you can do some things. You can do some hip mobility.
Yeah.
You can do certain things that help you get in a little bit better position. But somebody like me is always going to have some forward lean. Even if I did a high bar, had a lot of forward knee travel, I'm still going to have some forward lean. And the way I look at it is my hips, lower back, and my posterior chain are very strong.
Yeah.
And if I want to squat the max amount of weight, I've got to use those to my advantage. I've had people say, well, you should widen your stance and do this. And Mcgill kind of moved my legs around, moved my hips around. He was like, you would not get any benefit from squatting wider. He's like, you lose all your power. You squat, you have gotten the most out of what your frame has provided.
Yeah.
And he's like, we're going to make some small tweaks and suggestions. He's like, but I don't see anything in your squat form that stands out to me as that caused your injury.
Yeah.
He's like, now maybe the way you train and training through pain and all this kind of stuff. But if you look at most of my squats, I don't really go into spinal flexion.
Yeah.
In fact, it's usually deadlift where I've injured myself.
Yeah.
And that's usually if I'm like, the days it's happened are when I've been stressed out, when I feel like kind of stiff in my hips and I'm having a real hard time getting close to the bar. So I end up, when that bar feels further from me, that's when I can kind of get hunched over. And that's it. But, some days I feel like, God dang, I can almost fully upright on a deadlift, and it's just, I think I'm excited to go back and be able to train hard and heavy, knowing what I know now and knowing like when it's time to hold them, fold them, and when it's time to walk away, because I've definitely held them when it was time to walk away.
Yeah. You said you wouldn't change anything if you went back, but would you implement some of the stuff that you've learnt from Mcgill or some of the rehab stuff previously?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think it would. Who knows if it would have made a difference or prevented it or whatever, but it certainly couldn't have hurt.
Yeah. And what would you recommend to newer lifters as far as doing that stuff? Would you say, are you getting people to do that when you're coaching them? Are you implementing some like bird dogs or the big three and
I think
implementing stuff like that?
I think doing some anti-rotational movements. I think really focusing on somebody getting a strong core with a lot of endurance is important. And I think also, working in multiple planes. Yeah. And particularly like doing some single leg work. I think that's stuff I'd go back and do, because I look at how I used to squat, and man, it's when you do a movement like that and you have any kind of technique breakdown, just when you do it more and more, all it does is make the technique like ingrades it worse and worse. Yeah. Right. So I used to have this hip shift where I'd shift to the left in the hole. Yeah. And what it is my right hip is tighter than my left, so it's pushing me that way. Yeah. And I used to always just think, well, that's just how I squat, and that's what ended up causing me to have a hip injury, or at least I think it caused me to have a hip injury. And, if I had worked on that earlier, maybe I wouldn't have had that. Yeah. So and that hip shift started out as something that wasn't so bad. Yeah. And ended up becoming worse and worse. Now, part of that was because I got really bad advice from some physical therapists, or actually it was the orthopedic I was saying, who kept trying to get me to stretch this hip. And actually one of the first people I talked to was Quinn Hinnock, who was like, stop stretching that hip. Like, stretch this one. If anything, don't stretch this one. He's like, we need to tighten this one up. The same thing Mcgill said, I have one hamstring that's tighter than the other. Okay. And he was like, most people would tell you to stretch the tight hamstring and make, he's like, I'm going to tell you to try and make the left one tighter, That also could be part of the hip shift, because this hamstring is looser than this one. So, but that hip shift just got worse and worse over time, because all I did was move the same way, right? And it's just it's pushing away from this tight one, pushing into this one, so it's making this one even looser over time, because you're effectively stretching it every time you're going down for a squat. Yeah. So if I'd done single leg work, if I'd done some other things, maybe that would have helped me.
So there you go, people. Single leg work.
Yeah, it's not just for bikini girls.
Yeah. Speaking of bikini girls,
so I know we had a quick discussion about it yesterday. I just wanted to talk to you about the differences with bodybuilding and powerlifting, and how you felt coming out of each of the competitions that you've done.
Yeah. Wow, well, actually, I think I really enjoyed the training cycle of powerlifting, and I know Layne will probably differ with his opinion about that. But I think that's just because I whinged a lot about the pain. But, you know, I think all powerlifters do that. Like, it would be not normal, right? So, yeah, it's very rewarding, I think. Powerlifting, you can kind of go into the training session, you can walk away feeling like you've really achieved something. It's like instant gratification. So my nature is to be very competitive. I've always done sports growing up, and I much prefer that. Whereas the bodybuilding, whilst I've enjoyed training because it's just something that I've done for a long time, I don't feel like I have the same sense of like being whole. I don't know. It's just not. It's not a sport I would choose to do long term.
It's the difference between racing a horse and showing a horse.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, and I love bodybuilding. I enjoyed bodybuilding, but there's nothing like a meet coming down to the last deadlift and pulling for the win.
Yeah.
There is nothing like that. I cannot describe it to people out there. I've had it one opportunity at the 2015 auto. My last deadlift was pull for the win, and hitting that is like a fucking religious experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like at a big meet like that, you just cannot describe how awesome that feels.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, bodybuilding, you're just waiting for somebody to read a card.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we were saying before, Lauren, it's very subjective, I guess. You know, you can the standard of the competition has increased so much over the last 5-10 years in bodybuilding. So there's a very, you know, great lineup, and often there's hardly any difference between, you know, fifth and first. So it really just comes down to who does the judge like to look over better, you know. So at least with powerlifting, it's a skill. You know, you execute the movement. If you do it, you do it. If you don't, you don't. You know, it's win or lose. So I really enjoyed it, but I do worry about the long-term health risks, I suppose, with, you know, knowing and being around people in the sport. And Layne, you know, I see what you've been through, and it's not like you're a wuss or you've done all the wrong things. You know, it's just
I was going to say, I don't even really complain about pain. I complain about not being able to train.
Right. But that's always something that you have to consider. You know, there is that risk of being kind of incapacitated at some point during your life. But I guess there's some risk with all sports. So, you know, whichever you choose, you know, there's going to be, if you're competing at an elite level, you know, I used to do track sprinting. Like, something would go wrong, you know, so often, whether it was shin splint, something wrong with your foot, I tore my hamstring. Like, there's always something if you're working at a high level. So, I really enjoyed the powerlifting. That's good. That being said, I'm going to do a bodybuilding show at the end of the year because I am. So, yeah, I'll probably continue to do both for a little bit longer.
I think you were happy that the kind of the powerlifting was over a little bit in terms of you kind of needed a mental break and a switch.
Yeah, you do need a time off. A little bit of time
and
off.
I think you're probably the same as me in that you really enjoy functional training, and that, you know, you're working hard, you're pushing your body to your endurance limits. Unlike Layne, who doesn't like to walk, that's endurance. So the 10-minute walks
sounds familiar.
Yeah,
True bodybuilder.
the 10-minute walks that we do 3 times a day. He looks at the clock, he sets the timer. If it's a second over 5 minutes, he's like, "Hey babe, we're turning back yet."
I'm just gonna buy a scooter and go along with it for moral support.
Just swing your arms on the scooter.
So, I think I really enjoy, like, the high intensity, like, interval training and CrossFit. I've never been a CrossFit member, but I really like the Olympic lifts and doing those kind of cross hybrid style workouts where you're running, then you've got a strength task, then you've got a agility task, you know.
I would definitely agree that when I did CrossFit, you might feel smashed for 10 minutes to an hour after the session, but generally every day you wake up and you feel amazing, then you want to train. Now powerlifting, I'm like,
especially at your level, like, you're doing amazing, so I can imagine, like, I feel sore, and I'm probably lifting half of what you do.
It's been a rough year, so it's been a 6 months of this year has been comp prep completely for me, so I'm very happy to be deloading. I just had 2 weeks off, as we spoke about before, and had yesterday and today my first sessions back, and I've nearly died with all the high volume.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I had the same thing. I had to take 2 weeks off from anything kind of crazy, and I was just sitting there twiddling my fingers going, Andres, can you please put something in my program? And then
I didn't want to train. I was like, do I need to start now?
and then the first session of the week back, it was like 8 to 10, so I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now? I've got to get in there and do 12 deadlifts, and you've just been doing one for such a long time. I was nearly dead at 6. I think I put the bar down at about 6. I was like, yeah, that'll do. So, that's that.
And so what's your bodybuilding competition you have this year?
I'll probably do 2. There's the WBFF show is in Miami at the end of the year in November. And then our good friend Paul Ravella, he will host a show in our local town, Tampa, which is the weekend after, I think.
Okay.
So I'll probably do his show as well, just to kind of tie them all together.
Really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It'll be hopefully a little bit more manageable than previous shows, because some of the others I've done, it's been like a 4-week gap, and that's just... it's like, okay, I'll probably do a short mini reverse and then try and maintain, and it's just not very fun.
Yeah.
So, again, that's another reason why I really like powerlifting. You get to eat, you feel strong, you feel amazing, and, no complaints there.
Food is good.
Food is very good.
So what you end up, what were your lifts at the competition?
I totaled 729, I think it was, so...
Kilos.
I wish. Yeah.
Aussies love coming to the States because they're putting 45s on.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, shit, I'm lifting double the weight. And then if you don't do the conversion, so that's pounds. I actually had to change my deadlift on the day. So I'd done all of my training blocks in sumo deadlift, and then I'd been having some hip issues. Just I still don't know what the actual problem is. I think it's just very tight hip flexors.
Like Layne.
Yeah, I've got really, it must be that. But I do have long femurs, so we'll give that. We have the
No,
same.
I remember you were pulling sumo one day, and you texted me and you said, I think I've messed something up with my hip flexors.
I couldn't.
I think based on how I think you strained or partially tore something, because it was one of those things where the more you did it, the worse it got.
Yeah, I actually know exactly what you're talking about now. I do remember. So I went to pull a lift, and it was probably a little bit heavy for the day, and I was feeling crappy, and I pulled, and I was like, this isn't moving. And then instead of just kind of slowly letting it go, I kind of let it go quickly. And it was like, that funny feeling that you get in your, I don't know if you pull sumo, but it was just like twang, and I was like, oh, it didn't feel very good.
Twangs are never good.
Yeah, so I think I let go too abruptly, and my muscles just contracted, and something happened, and from then on I just felt that same pain every time I would try to sumo, so I couldn't really get any foot drive until I kind of was almost to the top of my lift. Then it was okay. So
yeah, the day of the comp, for her last warm-up, it looked like about a 9.5 RPE.
Oh, it was about 70 pounds less than what I could normally do too. It was fucking annoying.
And I could tell Andres, her coach, Andres never freaks out, but he was kind of like,
trying to hide freaking out.
Oh shit. Well,
yeah, I think I had like 250 pounds in the bar, and I literally looked like it would have been a 9 out of 10 for us. It's like, this is a good sign.
So I had said to him, I'm like, I've seen her conventional, 290, about 130 kilos, not easy, but solid.
Yeah.
And Andres is like, all right, well, let's see your conventional real quick. So we put I think we had 260 on there, or 125 kilos, and she pulled it very solidly, and we both said, you're pulling conventional today. And actually you could see just like she felt so defeated, because she's like, fuck. And We're very different in certain ways. Like, she's very, when she gets stressed, she gets really quiet, and she's very quiet anyway, which you can tell. But if she's stressed, like, literally no sound will emit from her for hours.
I think I go days without talking.
Yeah, and so I told Andres. Andres is the same way. Andres is very quiet. I'm like, you got to go talk to her. Because I know I'll just stress her out more. Because I'm like, even the day of the meet, I'm like so nervous. I'm like running around, babe, do you need this? Is everything? And Andres had to come up to me. He's like, hey, Layne,
go over there.
Could you? Yeah, no. He's like, would you mind like going to the other room for a few minutes?
Did he really?
Yeah.
That's
like,
so funny.
Fuck. But I mean, I understand. So. So he went and talked to her, and I could tell he got her in a better space, and she came out, and your opener was like 125 kilos, I want to say, and she came out and hit it very solid, and then you could just see like she got her confidence back and her mojo back.
Yeah.
And I think you ended up with 137.5 kilos, 303 pounds on deadlift.
Yeah, I think we probably could have gone a little well.
Yeah.
If you had asked me what should I lift as my third attempt, like when I first went to do the first one, I would have told you no. Like, we're not going anywhere near there. But by the third lift, I think I should have done a little bit more. But
well, I mean,
it was my first meet.
Yeah.
So.
Here's the thing: is if you left pounds on the table, it means you hit your lifts.
Yeah.
People,
exactly.
I'll hear
I did
people. I never understood this powerlifting mentality of I got to go 6 for 9. God forbid I hit a fucking third attempt, because then that means I might have left something on the table,
Yeah.
It's like, no, if you left something on the table, Matt Gary said it the best of anybody I ever heard. He asked, he was teaching a class, he said, what's the point of powerlifting? The goal is to win, right? What's the best way to win? Hit the biggest total you can. What's the best way to hit the biggest total you can? Hit as many lifts as you can. You don't get credit for what you left on the bar, right? Exactly. So if you had a really good day and you ended up, maybe you had a few more pounds left in you, well, you know what?
That's just good confidence for next time as well.
Yeah, exactly, And the thing is, too, the more lifts you hit, the more confident you get over time. Mm-hmm. And so you ended up hitting, sorry, I made this about something else. You ended up hitting 70 kilos on bench. And then squats, I want to say it was 271. So that would have been, I think, 100. Let me just
do some math real quick.
Yeah, let me do some arithmetic. This is embarrassing, actually, that I can't do this off the cuff. Cause
that's all right. I'm embarrassed. My dog just farted underneath the table.
122 and a half kilos. So, she had a good first meet. It was a good experience. I think you finished second in your class.
That's cool.
Yeah. And
good to podium at your first meet.
Yeah, that was nice. And I think the girl that won was pretty...
She was good.
She was good.
She'll go to nationals. Yeah. So, I'm glad it was oh, God, I smell it now.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. The dog farted.
Oh, lovely. I'm so glad I chose the instinct.
Better. If you'd have smelled that, you would have thought it was one of us. Not yesterday. I don't know what we ate yesterday, but my God. That whole fucking Airbnb. Oh, my God.
Destroyed it.
Yeah, it was pretty
all
bad.
those sugar alcohols.
We were having fart wars.
So that's not just in our relationship.
She's so embarrassed right now. Just like, oh, you think anything you can do, I can do better.
I feel like I don't really fart that often. It was like yesterday, I was like, I'm gonna give you a run for your money because you fart so loudly, Layne.
I do fart loudly, but be real, it usually doesn't stink.
Yeah, that's true.
Mine are usually loud, but not stinky.
I wish I could say the same about you.
Mine smell like flowers.
Is the flower made out of shit?
Yeah. Speaking of farts.
Oh, God. I have a question on farts.
Want to talk about protein, and because generally, Holly's maybe come across it. I don't know if you've come across it with your Australian clients, but what we tend to notice is that people in Australia undereat protein significantly. Like when we look at people's diet recalls and stuff like that, they most of them are getting 60 to 80 grams a day.
Wow,
stuff like that. So I mean, when you go to cafes here, obviously the meals and that are not very protein rich, essentially. So I just want you to speak on, obviously you know a thing or two about protein. I want you to speak on the importance of protein and why do we need protein, and is it important for changing body composition, and what?
Yeah, I mean, for those who don't know, I did a PhD in nutritional sciences, and my area of emphasis was protein metabolism. There's a multitude of benefits associated with higher protein diets. First one being improved body composition. If the training is the most important thing for improving your body comp. I want to make that clear. Like, you could be a vegan with eating 40 grams of protein a day, and if you weight train, you'll get more muscle and stronger.
Yeah.
But if you want to optimize your body composition, it seems that the best outcomes of body composition happen anywhere from 2 to 3 grams per kilo of lean body mass for protein. And there doesn't really seem to be, they've never really found protein toxicity, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
We haven't really studied intakes of more than 4 grams per kilo of lean body mass, so I don't usually recommend more than that just because of, we haven't studied it. And I think it probably is like anything. There probably is a point where too much is a bad thing.
Yeah.
But, protein is also interesting in that it's very satiating. So people get a lot of improved satiety. So people who, if they hate calorie counting or, don't want to count everything down to the gram, if you tell them eat more protein, just increase their portion sizes of protein and decrease portion sizes of other things in proportion, they usually improve their body composition, get leaner. Further, protein has a very high level of thermic effect. So when you eat food, human metabolism is kind of like a internal combustion engine. So, the metabolism of petrol is not perfect, right? You actually have to put energy in to get that energy out of the fuel. And so now we always get more energy out of the fuel than we put in, otherwise it wouldn't make any sense, right? And the human body's the same way. People want to say, well, do I have to track this? Or does this count? Yes, everything counts. Even high fiber source, even like celery, which is considered to be like the most calorie-free thing there is,
I think
still
there's a bit
has
of a misconception that there are free foods out there. No,
it still has net calories. Now you have some things like celery where
people say, but I lose weight if I eat celery, don't I?
Yeah, well, right, but and the fact of the matter is, you probably are never going to eat enough celery to be able to overeat on it in terms of calories, but it still has net calories. Is the point that I think that's important to make. Well, protein has about a 30% TEF, which is the thermic effect of food. Compare that to carbohydrates or fats. Carbohydrates are about 6 to 8%, and fats are about 2 to 3%. So you're getting more bang for your caloric buck in terms of what your body has to put in to get out. Yeah. It's also better for body composition in terms of increasing protein turnover, better for satiety. And there's also been Bill Campbell, a friend of mine who's a professor at USF, he just did a study where they compared females and had them either, the instructions were...
below 1.4 grams?
Below 1.2, I think.
Okay.
So they had two groups. In the first group, they said, we all we care about is we want you to eat less than 1.2 grams per kilo of body mass. The other group, more than 2.4. They could go as high as they wanted. The other group could go as low as they wanted, but it had to be above those. And they found that the group consuming the higher protein diet actually consumed more calories than the group with the lower protein diet, but actually had better body composition by the end. Actually lost fat. So it seems like there's some kind of imperfect metabolism of protein that favors dissipation of energy versus storage of energy. Yeah.
So I think if you look at like comparing calories in general, so even if you were consuming the same amount of calories, if you simply made a substitution from it being higher in carbohydrates and fats to higher in protein, just that substitution and change alone. So that's where you would see somebody that is really new to training and has just started to change their diet. Something like that would start to see improvements in body composition. So for the exact same calorie value. So I think that's pretty cool. Like,
I think Jose Antonio had a study the same roughly, didn't he? Wasn't it up to like 4.8?
It was like 4 grams per kilo.
4.4 or 4.8 or something per kilo.
4.4, yeah.
And they saw better improvements in body composition changes with the higher protein and match calories for calories. So
yeah, I think, I like tracking because I like to eat the foods I like to eat, and that provides me with a tool to eat the foods I like to eat, but still keep a good body composition. But if you hate tracking, or you're somebody who just is like, well, I'm just looking for a way to eat intuitively, eating greater portions of protein versus, carbohydrates or fats is probably one of the, it's like people think I'm like anti-keto or anti-paleo or anti-this, or I'm mostly just anti-bullshit. But if you take for example paleo, and I've ripped paleo a lot for the claims they make. But if you told me, generally eat more protein, more fiber, less, more fruits and vegetables, less refined carbohydrate. I mean, those are good recommendations, right?
I think
for most people.
would agree on that one.
Yeah, those are good recommendations for most people. Well, vegans would disagree. Yeah. But I think the problem is with a lot of the bullshit that gets out there is people find something that works for them, and then want to kind of then they want to kind of evangelize everything else, right? So it's like, this worked for me, so everybody needs to be doing it. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, some things work for different people. Now, there's always there's physiological ways to get to a point, but you can't discount what somebody just enjoys, right? Some people have had success on keto, and they just like keto. Yeah. They just like doing that. And I said this the other day on Twitter. I said, you guys aren't going to like this, but calorie restriction is what drives benefits for weight loss and diabetes management. Yeah. Okay? Keto's not magic. Low fat's not magic. Intermittent fasting's not magic. Carb backload isn't magic. But if any of those things help you create a restriction to get those benefits, then fuck yeah, you know.
Yeah.
But people, it's kind of like once they find something that works for them, she's like, don't talk about keto that way. Once they find something that works for them, it's almost like it's like a religious experience where they have to force it on everybody else and do it for them too. And I heard Greg Nuckols say something the other day that I thought was, I'm sure you guys know Greg Nuckols.
Yeah.
That guy's brilliant, by the way. He said, bros make the mistake of, because something worked for them, they want to apply it to everybody. Science bros make the mistake of, because this works for most people, it should work for everyone. Yeah. Right? For the individual. And I think that's where, you know, I've always felt one of my big advantages was I had the science background, but I also actually worked with people. Yeah. You know, and I get a lot of blowback about the metabolic adaptation, reverse dieting, mostly from Lyle McDonald saying I was full of shit. But I think I understand why he thinks that way, because if all you did was read studies and you didn't actually work with people, you wouldn't see this kind of stuff. Yeah. Right? So, but when you actually work with people and realize that stuff that's reported in studies is just averages. It's just means. So if an average was, like, let's take metabolic adaptation, he likes to say it's only 15%. You can only, get a reduction in BMR of 15%. But that's the average. So that means that somebody was fucking 35% and another person didn't have it at all. Yeah. Right? So if you take extreme cases, I mean, if you look at my friend Chris Foss, he's a professor now, but when he was a grad student, he did a case study on himself as a natural bodybuilder. Yeah. His BMR started at 2,400 calories a day, and by the end of his prep, it was just under 1,300. He almost had a metabolic adaptation. So when you take out the amount of decline in energy expenditure from like lean body mass and body fat, he still had like a 35% reduction in metabolic rate, not predicted by his loss of body mass. So again, it's like, for that individual, it was a much greater impact. Whereas some people probably don't have it at all. And I've had the same thing with people I've dieted down. I've had a couple people in my experience, not very many, but a couple, who I gave them the original fat loss diet, calculated their how much they should lose, but I never had to adjust them. Never had to drop their calories, nothing. They just lost like a stone right to stage, but that's very rare. Yeah. But it still happens. Yeah. So am I supposed to go to them and say, nope, we got to drop your calories further because you've definitely had a 15% reduction in metabolic rate, right? No, I'm looking at the individual and I'm seeing what works for them.
So how important is protein frequency? Because we get a lot of people who say, oh yeah, but I got my protein at dinner. So they're having like 90% of their protein at dinner and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's American. There was a study by DeCastro in the mid-90s, I want to say, that I cited a lot during my PhD thesis. And they showed that Americans, 65% of their protein intake is at dinner. Yeah. Right? So the question becomes, all right, can you make up for low protein at one time of the day with overeating at another time of the day, right? The body does not have a viable mechanism of storage for protein. We do for fat.
Some limited for carbohydrate.
Limited for carbohydrate, right? Because you have glycogen, but that's only finite. Yeah. Protein is really, if you're not using it for protein synthesis, those amino acids get oxidized, right? Which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's just you can't store it. There's no I should back up. There is a small pool of amino acids that are readily available for protein synthesis. That it's kind of a kinetics thing where they flux throughout the body, but that is not a storage vessel. Yeah. So if you look at the research, you can't. And this is where the intermittent fasting people hate me. Or I shouldn't say the people, the zealots hate me. If you look at the research, and we did a study based on this, we fed, it was in rats to be, just putting it out there. But by the way, the rat is an excellent model for protein metabolism, and usually things that are found in the rat with protein metabolism specifically get validated in human studies. And we fed 70% of the protein at dinner and then 15% at breakfast and lunch. And what we found after 11 weeks was the animals that were eating the evenly distributed protein meals, they had bigger muscles. Now, it wasn't a huge difference. It was only about 8% absolute weight. But for a powerlifter or a bodybuilder, somebody who wants to win win at a high level, that's
over 10 years of
that's a
careers
big friggin' deal, And keep in mind, 11 weeks in a rat, that's a much longer percentage of their lifespan than relative to a human being, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people will ask, well, why don't some of these rat studies pan out in humans? And I think part of it is because if you do a 12-week study in rats, they only live 2 years.
Yeah.
So you're looking at like an eighth of their lifespan.
Yeah.
Whereas if you do it 12 weeks in humans, that's like, a 200th of the lifespan.
Yeah.
Right? So if you could do it a comparative amount of time, would have the same. And also rats are a little bit different in that they kind of, humans tend to grow, plateau, and then come back down in growth. Rats kind of just keep going, and kind of semi-plateau, but grow almost until they die. So there are some differences.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I would say based on the data and based on some of the human studies that have been done now, I think it does matter a little bit. Yeah. I think the most important thing is, yes, definitely your total protein intake throughout the day.
Yeah.
And I think probably being in a rhythm, like if you got used to intermittent fasting, I think your body probably would get better at capturing that protein and using it at those times.
Yeah.
But if you ask me what I think is absolutely better on the whole, it's probably eating 3 to 5 protein-containing meals per day that have a sufficient amount of protein to trigger anabolism, and kind of distributing those relatively equally.
Yeah. And what about the quality of protein? Because we see some people, well, they call themselves IIFYM, but it looks like just an excuse to eat shit all day, and they get really creative of making their macros, and I've never seen, I don't know, I'm like, how the fuck do you hit the macros with your diet? It just pretty much looks like cereal and milk.
Well, milk's not actually a bad protein inherently, so it's...
Milk is delicious. You live milk alone.
Yeah, I drink milk.
Yeah.
I think plant sources of protein is probably where we can see a bit of a negative.
Yeah, like you'll get someone, obviously, they'll get it from... maybe from a breakfast cereal, and then I'll get a little bit of milk, and like 250 mils of milk. Are you getting close to that leucine threshold? How much is that going to matter? Is it like...
Yeah, I think that, it felt like I just heard one of the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park.
Thoracic Park.
Thoracic. Did you guys like that? That was great, right? So... God, that guy went so viral, didn't he? So viral. I think it was because the caption on that was the best part. Was the caption was just, you're like, and like I kind of felt for the guy because everybody's had lifts.
Fit sent him a belt.
I know. But everybody's had not to get too far off track, but everybody's had a lift in their life where like if it got fucking posted, it would just But I think it was
he was pretty extreme.
Yes, it was pretty bad. But it was the caption. It was the caption. It was like, I want to see anybody else who's natural, who's this strong, and everybody just starts tagging. I get like 80 tags in that thread, and people were like, do you know this guy? And but I was actually pretty like I actually told like she was actually like brutal to him. I'm like, hey, maybe it's not. This poor guy might be contemplating like some really bad shit after everything you went through. But anyway, IFYM. I think if you're doing it right, it's pretty self-regulating in terms of like if you're not actually eating shit macros. If you're actually eating macros that make sense, it's hard to eat a lot of shit. Like for example, if I'm in my case, I'm pretty high macro. Like I'm 240 grams of protein, 400 grams of carbs, 100 grams of fat. So, like I'm pretty flexible in what I can put in. But like when she was at the end of her diet and she's down to 130 grams of carbs and 45 grams of fat or whatever it is, like you really can't eat like much shit on that. You can, but you're not going to feel very satisfied, right?
I find people they try and get real creative, and I don't know. It looks like there's no nutrients in the diet. Pretty much, they're getting down to a Pop-Tart and whey protein 5 times a day.
I think it probably depends on their calorie intake. So I tend to look at people's total calorie intake versus what their lean body body mass is, and like Laynes, for example, he probably is only around 37 calories per kilogram of lean body mass. I'm actually pretty close to that right now. I'm at the end of a reverse diet, so I'm at 35. But for people that are on the lower end of that spectrum, it is much more difficult to get in all of those micronutrients. So I typically tend to tell people that we work with, when you're below 30 calories per kilogram of lean body mass, you probably need to make sure that maybe 75% of your macronutrients are coming from whole food sources, because that's where you're getting your micronutrients from. But if you work on that reverse diet and get your calories up to a more normal or a higher intake, and your metabolism is functioning more optimally at that point, you have a bit more flexibility. So, you know, maybe 50% of your carbohydrates and fats can come from, you know, your whole foods, and then the rest, cool, you can do with whatever you please, whatever your preferences are. So
yeah, I mean, if you're eating a lot more calories, you have a lot more opportunities throughout the day that you're going to consume the vitamins and minerals that you need. And, you know, going over those requirements, well, in the case of a select few, vitamin D seems to be an exception. You get some more vitamin D, seems to be pretty good for you, up to a certain point. But, you know, when you're down around, you know, 1,500, 2,000 calories a day, you've only got so many opportunities to get those macronutrients in. Yeah. So it becomes much more important when you're at a very low calorie intake to make sure you're making good food selections as opposed to a higher calorie intake, actually. Yeah. And actually, my friend Sohee Lee, she did an experiment during her contest prep. She ate a Snickers every day during her contest prep just to kind of prove a point. And she won her pro card. Like, she did really well for bikini. But she said after about week 3, she hated the Snickers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because she's like,
significant amount.
It's like 250 calories right there, you know? And she's like, I just wanted a big salad.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why, if you're doing it right and you're not being an asshole about it, it's usually self-regulating, because you're going to select, as your calories get lower, you are going to select those more filling foods that are more fibrous, have more macronutrients, those sorts of things.
Oh, you've probably all been on a diet before. It's when your calories are low, like, you're feeling hungry. So if you go out and blow, like I made it the other day, I didn't have a great amount of food selection, so we just moved house. We had nothing in our house. So I was like, what am I going to eat for breakfast? And we had like Reese's cups and some yogurt, and it was actually just shit in our house. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to put something together. I'll wear the consequences later. And I ate it, and I was like, that was so crap. Like, I just wasted at least 50% of my fats, probably half my daily carbohydrate intake in one meal, and it was awful. And I was like, oh, I feel really disappointed. So, like, if you were doing that, like, at the very end of your diet, like, I can only imagine how much macro remorse you would have.
She actually gets very angry when she eats something that she doesn't like.
Yeah, I'm a foodie.
It's a waste of food. I know we are.
Yeah, I'm such a foodie. Yeah.
I just won't eat it. Like, I'll just stop eating it and just switch to something else.
That's good. Actually, yeah, I did that the other day. I tipped out like half a bowl of ice cream because I didn't like the ice cream, which is unusual for me. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on here, guys. And I know it was a bit of a tight schedule too with the seminar tonight. But do you want to plug anything? Are you taking on any online clients, or I know you've got your book out as well.
You know, we probably taken on a few more clients. We're about maxed out right now, which is nice, because it was pretty crap there for a while.
Yeah, well, you changed your focus for your business, so you weren't really doing as much.
I was focusing on Avatar for a long time, and then obviously that's not around anymore. So you know, getting back into coaching, it's amazing how quickly, like, people forget you do something. You know, like social media, they just forget. I have people ask me all the time now, like, do you coach? Like, the fuck? Like, I started this shit, but the original, the OG, man.
No, when I first met you, like, well, actually I knew then, but like, I did not know that you would coach. I was like, oh, this is a smart guy.
How do you think I made money? Like, just talked about science on the internet, and magically money fell upon me.
I don't think I even thought about it. To be honest,
isn't that how Bill Nye got famous?
Famous for being famous.
No, so So really what we've been focusing on is I released my book, The Complete Contest Prep Guide, which is a 265-page, literally a guide to contest prep for bodybuilders. But actually is it's not specific for powerlifting or other things, but it's useful for anybody who wants to learn how to set up a fat loss diet. Yeah. And it really goes into a lot of detail, a lot more detail than any book has gone into, in terms of not so much some of the physiology, but more in just the practical nuts and bolts of how to do it, right? Yeah. This book could teach you how to coach yourself, and I'm getting testimonials every week from people saying, "Oh, I coached myself and look what I did," and it's really cool to see that, because you know, not everybody can afford to spend $100, $200, $400, $500 a month on a coach,
Yeah.
right? And that's how some of the top coaches cost.
Yeah.
So like having that option for people, it's really made me feel really good, and we've sold a lot of copies of that book, which I'm really proud of.
Awesome.
So if people are interested, they can find it at contestprepbook.com. And then we also have been working on the workout builder on my website, which is the Layne workout builder. And basically, myself, Andres, and Holly have worked on that. And basically, it allows you to use some of the same workout templates that we've used in the past, as well as other ones that we've drawn up, but customize them. You know, pick exercises that you enjoy or that you have access to, and really get some nice science-based training. And that's only
So what does it sort of give you, like a leg movement, and then you just choose a leg movement from a drop-down menu?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it does.
And
So
then you put in your numbers, and then you hit your RPE for that week, and then it'll readjust the numbers, or...
Yeah, so we have percentage-based programs. We also have RPE-based programs, or RIR. We use RIR.
Yeah.
So people can select which ones they prefer. You know, and we're going to have some new stuff coming out in the future as well. But that's only $12.99 a month. You know, and again, if you can't afford to pay a coach to write your programming, and we categorize them, you know, by difficulty level, by training experience, by your goal. You know, whether hypertrophy is your main goal or strength is your main goal. So people can find something that's good for them and that will work for them, and you get good science-based programming, and also we put out a ton of content every single month from different contributors, and I do a video Q&A and all that kind of stuff. So people seem to be really happy with the value that we're providing, and I think that's what we love is providing good value to people. And obviously she's got her ebook as well, her recipe ebook, which is fabulous.
Cool. Yeah, lots of low-calorie tasty options. I'm actually a foodie, so it would be nothing worse than having a book of things that tasted like absolute crap, which I have seen previously with some people's efforts at making books. So that's really cheap. It's like $9. It's also on the same shop app as the book, isn't it, Layne?
Yeah, if you go to contestprepbook.com, that's just a Shopify store basically, and you can find her ebook there as well. But those are our two big things right now that we're really pushing. I've got some other stuff that I'm working on as well, and that she's working on, and that'll be coming up in the next few months, few years. We have like stuff coming out in months, year, and years. Like we've got some really exciting projects, so we're really pumped.
So where do people find this workout builder?
My website, biolayne.com.
Okay, that's on biolayne.com.
Yep.
And then if anyone wants to contact you guys?
Easy. You can just email me, Layne at biolayne.com, and she's hb at biolayne.com.
Okay, cool.
Easy.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
See ya.